According to Psychology Today, imposter syndrome refers to the psychological phenomenon in which an individual doubts his or her abilities and harbors a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite concrete evidence of the person's competence. Imposter syndrome can manifest in various ways, from striving for perfection to minimizing achievements and fear of failure. Wharton professor and author Adam Grant said in his book Hidden Potential, "Not long ago, it dawned upon me that imposter syndrome is a paradox. Others believe in you. You don't believe in yourself. Yet you believe yourself instead of them. If you doubt yourself, shouldn't you also doubt your low opinion of yourself?" My guest today, Katie Bower DiTullio, leads a large team of customer service professionals at a global company and recently experienced imposter syndrome herself when she was promoted to her current role. For all the women out there who are experiencing this, you are not alone. We are going to get vulnerable today on this topic to help you stop questioning your abilities and encourage you to tap into your hidden potential. This is E3, Engage and Empower with Empathy. Welcome to today's podcast, Katie. It's so nice to have you on the show today, and I'm very excited about this topic because it's definitely a topic that I recently discovered is shared by many women I know, including you. So let's dig right in. The first question I have for you is around a recent article in Forbes magazine, and Laura Nowinski, the COO at KPMG, which is an international professional services firm, she was recently interviewed by Forbes on the topic of imposter syndrome in female leaders. And in her words, she was stunned at the degree to which highly accomplished women frequently struggle with feelings of inadequacy, self doubt, low self confidence, and confusion about how they reach the high levels they have achieved. And in one of my recent podcast episodes, I talked to Sarah Bell at Strive to Thrive Coaching about her battle with imposter syndrome. I also shared my own experience. And now you were recently given a promotion which increased your level of responsibility significantly. And this caused you to develop feelings associated with imposter syndrome. And, I always thought I was alone with my feelings until I started talking to other women about this topic. And I quickly realized this is really a trend among female leaders that needs to be addressed. How did imposter syndrome manifest with you, and what did you do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, Rebecca, and inviting me to dive into this idea of imposter syndrome. And like you, I also was unaware until I started kind of researching it, just how prominent it is among other people, especially women. And as you mentioned, I was recently given the opportunity to step into a director level position. This is something that I've been striving for the last 14 years of my career, and yet almost immediately after I was offered the position, I had this overwhelming sense of self-doubt and was suddenly questioning my capabilities. I was thinking, am I smart enough for this role? Do I really have what it takes to lead such a large team? And what if the hiring manager made a mistake and I'm not really the best candidate? I had the opportunity to travel to France recently, and I would attend these meetings, and I'd find myself looking around the room silently wondering if I was truly worthy to be sitting amongst other great leaders at my company who I can now call my peers. And I had kind of heard about imposter syndrome a little bit before, particularly amongst artists when they're sharing a new piece of artwork. But I knew this was a topic that had to span across a larger boundary. And so one of the very first things I did was I headed to my local Barnes and Nobles, right over to the self-help section. I wasn't really even sure what I was looking for. This is something that I stand there and I kind of wait for Barnes and Nobles to tell me what I need to find. And I was standing there, and on the end cap there was this book with bright fiery orange letters that read, I thought it was just me, but it isn't. It was a book by Brené Brown, who I just love. If you're ever interested in some inspiring dialogue and topics. She's absolutely fantastic. I definitely recommend her. But this book in particular explores making the journey from what will people think to I am enough. And I absolutely recommend the book. Full transparency, I haven't finished the entire thing yet, but it's absolutely fantastic. It looks a lot about shame and the root cause for these feelings that kind of are the catalyst for some of this imposter syndrome that we're seeing. Aside from reading and learning more about imposter syndrome, I started sharing how I was feeling with people who I trust. I'm a big talker. I like to have dialogue and open up, because I feel like, that's the best way to build trust and connection with people. You really get to relate and then understand that you're not alone in this. So I reached out, I confided how I was feeling to my successor, who's an incredibly strong woman in leadership and someone who I admire very much. And talking with her and others has really helped me to kind of take a step back and truly look at the big picture and the facts, if you will.
That's great. And I am fully with you. As far as Brene Brown is concerned, I think I have a couple of her books behind me
Yeah.
on my bookshelf. Interestingly, she really introduced the topic of vulnerability into the corporate workplace.
Yes.
And I feel like this is such a perfect example of a topic where you have to get a little bit vulnerable and be okay with just opening up about your situation to other people, and the fact that you were courageous enough and letting yourself be vulnerable and sharing your experience or your self-doubts with other leaders is really cool. I just wanted to comment the Barnes and Noble thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is just a thing that women do, but isn't it amazing how we automatically say, okay, what's wrong with me? And then we go to the self-help section.
Yes, so true.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not saying men wouldn't do that, but I mean, I don't know. I just feel like we are so hard on ourselves as women. And it's like the first inclination is, okay, let's address the problem that I have within myself. And then I'm going to go to the self-help section
Yeah, you're
and
absolutely
see if
right.
there's another inspiring woman who wrote something that will help me. I think it's a great tactic, but it's just an interesting observation as I was hearing you say this, because I oftentimes when I'm in Barnes and Noble, I only see women in the self-help section.
Mm. Mhm.
um, so the second question I had is going back to KPMG and the extensive research they've done on the topic of imposter syndrome in women. And interestingly, the findings indicate that 98% of women experience at least one of the power gaps that prevent individuals from reaching their highest potential. So, power gap number one is not recognizing your special talents, abilities, and gifts. And this is very timely because in our last podcast episode, I interviewed Carlos Martinez, who is a Gallup certified Clifton Strengths coach. And our whole conversation emphasized the importance of recognizing your talents so that you can show up as your best self at work. So, that being said, does this power gap resonate with you at all? And if so, how?
Absolutely. And it's literally taken me years to appreciate that some of my abilities are, in fact, my superpowers. Qualities that come naturally to me, like my ability for empathy. I always just assumed there was nothing special about it, right? Everyone has this. This is, nothing great here. I was feeling like these were characteristics that everyone possessed. And it's simply not the case. You start to dive into it and understand yourself more and others. And it's so important that we recognize we do have all of these different strengths and superpowers, so that we can collectively round each other out and build on that. I've embraced this realization and I've helped others to do the same. So we're all able to show up as our best selves at work.
So, elaborate on this a little bit more. Obviously, I created a podcast about empathy in the workplace because I saw the strong need for having this quality in leaders. People who are naturally empathetic can sense what other people are feeling. So, how do you use this gift to empower the people around you, Katie?
I think my ability to be empathetic has helped create trust within the team. I'd like to focus on cultivating a really safe space so that we can have genuine, authentic dialogue. And I have the team, show up. They know that it's a safe space where they can present any ideas, any questions, concerns, and there's no judgment. And that's kind of imperative for cultivating a safe team.
So I'm also wondering too, Katie, oftentimes people who are naturally empathetic can um, the sense the feelings in the room. So and I feel like this is a really truly a superpower, because you can oftentimes help people articulate their emotions when they can't even do it themselves, because you can sense. It's almost like you can touch it, you can feel it, um, when they may not even be able to express themselves appropriately. Have you found that beneficial when team members are struggling, for example, or are coming to you with concerns, or maybe just having a bad day and they don't know how to express it?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I do kind of pride myself on my ability to be able to read the room. And I like to bring that quality into the way that I lead. So if I'm going into a team meeting and I have a set agenda for the day and I get the feeling that something's off, or maybe I'm having a one-on-one meeting with someone and I can just tell, you kind of have to be able to read the room and then adjust your approach based on that to be the most effective leader and support your team truly. I'll tell anyone that will listen, I am in this job and do what I do for the people internally and externally. And I truly mean that. I like to sit back and make sure that my team feels that they have my full attention. I'm oftentimes quiet just so that I can sit back and listen and truly take in what they're saying. And that also helps you to gain different perspectives as a leader as well. If, kind of squash your own bias, if you can really sit back and truly just have a level playing field where you're listening to everyone. They feel like they're in a safe space where they can share. And that's how I like to lead.
When you were talking about internal and external audiences, it made me think about how important empathy is when you're in a customer facing role, which you are in.
Yes.
I mean, your customer service is like the most important department in the company. So how do you use this superpower of yours to support customers?
Absolutely. That's something that I've always done. My grandfather was a third generation pharmacist. And, that was something that was kind of instilled to us at a young age. You really want to care about the people that you're working with. And they can sense that, right? People are very well adept. They can sense if you're being authentic or if you're truly engaged. So again, going back to recognizing that my superpower might not be the innate characteristic that someone else has. I think that that's where we can really create training opportunities. And, I like to tell my team, put yourself in the customer's shoes, truly. And I know that's so cliche, but truly, if you're a customer and you're bringing this issue that the customer is bringing to you, how would you feel and what would be the most satisfying response for you? And I kind of encourage them to really take a minute and think about it so that we can truly care and be creating that relationship with our customer that's going to last a lifetime.
That's a wonderful exercise. So simple but so impactful, because you often imagine a customer service department becoming fairly transactional from a relationship perspective with the customer, but it's so much more than that. And you just demonstrated that by how important it is to put yourself in the customer's shoes, feel their pain points, and really use that as a way to address their problems and provide a solution that really, not just satisfies but exceeds expectations. Going back to the KPMG research, another interesting finding that I found fascinating is that 47% of executive women believe that having a supportive manager is the number one factor in combating imposter syndrome. And you, fortunately, have a very supportive leadership team, including your direct supervisor. So tell me, how has that helped you with your own feelings of self doubt? And how has that helped you better support your team and your customers?
I fully agree, and I have experienced firsthand just how critical having a supportive manager is in building confidence and fostering an environment where we can feel comfortable to openly talk about topics like imposter syndrome. My manager has been able to, again, help me really step back and look at the concrete facts versus allowing me to get caught up in that story that we tell ourselves. Why am I here? I don't know anything. Why would they have given me this role? I cannot stress it enough. Being able to cultivate that safe and environment that breeds trust naturally, that's where you're going to really feel support and get over those feelings of self-doubt and ultimately find ways to combat them when they creep into your mind because they always will.
Absolutely. So do you have any final tips or recommendations for people experiencing imposter syndrome?
I really can't emphasize just how helpful, open and honestly talking about it has been. Not only in getting myself out of my own head, but I quickly realized just how many people are dealing with similar thoughts on a regular basis. Back to the beginning of kicking this podcast off, it's wild once you start talking to people just how many people are dealing with this and have experienced it. So becoming more educated on the topic, and understanding just how common it is has really allowed me to improve my own leadership approach. So I can be more aware of it. I can check in with others and ensure that they're feeling confident in themselves as well, because it can be a debilitating mindset. So it's really important that we all become more aware of what it is, how to combat it when it sneaks into our minds. And for me, it's about constantly building on the tools in our self awareness, self improvement tool belt. So we can continue to kind of harness our superpowers and best support each other and the customers we serve in my area.
That's great advice. What I'm seeing is this nice package of having that self-awareness and the recognition of the unhealthy mindset that you've developed, but also what I'm hearing from you is making sure that you're surrounding yourself with this strong support network that includes your supervisor, but also other leaders and friends, family, etc. This makes me think a lot about a video I recently watched by Dr. Tara Swart, who's a neuroscientist and doctor, and she talked a lot about the science behind imposter syndrome. And interestingly, she explained that human connection is incredibly important in overcoming this, since we are all programmed to surround ourselves with other people for both physical and emotional support. And even though social media has connected us more in the digital sphere, people are feeling more isolated now than ever. And this isolation leads us to comparing ourselves unfavorably to other people or decreasing our sense of meaning and purpose in life, and therefore opening the door to things like imposter syndrome. And she also emphasized the importance of human interaction, connecting regularly with people, for example, having lunch together without distractions. So it seems really simple, but there's really science behind this human connection component. And she even talked about how important walking out in nature and connecting with the world is in preventing these feelings of isolation that could potentially lead to imposter syndrome. So just curious, how has connection with nature or connection with other people helped you overcome these feelings?
Yeah, it's so true. There's nothing quite as de-stressing or self-soothing as getting back to your roots, going to nature, taking a walk, or you know, in my case, I really am trying to connect more with people in the office after we've had this break of where we're all used to working remotely now, and we're getting people in, and we're just taking a full hour, and we're sitting outside, in the fresh air with the breeze and the grass, and having lunch, and really focusing. We're not on our phones, we're not eating lunch at our desk. It's really reinvigorating, I would say. And you talk, you learn more about people, where they are, what their thoughts and ideas are. And I just think that that connection with nature and with each other is so incredibly important. And we have to keep that at the forefront of our mind, where everything is so readily available and digital, how crucial that is for our own well-being. And ultimately, I think that that will help drive collaboration and success on the back end, just innately, right? You're in a better headspace, more positive, more ready to tackle any challenges that you might find.
Love that. And I'm definitely seeing a connection across a lot of the people I've talked to on this podcast so far. Is it's almost like we're all going back to basics. We did a lot of self-reflection and thinking during the pandemic about what is really important in life. And now that we're in this post-pandemic world, and the world is moving at a faster and faster pace, and with technology accelerating the pace even more, many of us are putting our devices down, taking time to sit outside and connect with people. I don't even remember what it was like pre-technology at this point,
Yeah.
but what did we do without smartphones and constant connection to the internet? We sat outside and had lunch with people, and we didn't think about looking at a phone during that time. So I think we're all just kind of going back to our natural human instincts, which is great, because I do think it will help alleviate this issue with isolation, and then people eventually possibly developing imposter syndrome, which is seems to be more prevalent than you would think. Thank you, Katie, so much for sharing your experience with us. I know it's not an easy topic to share with the world, so thank you for that. I hope your story has inspired other women or men. I mean, everyone experiences this, and really help somebody overcome this, and hopefully will change the world one step at a time.
That's the goal. Thank you, Rebecca.
Once again, this is Katie Bower. She heads up a large customer service team in the Americas for a big corporation. If any of you want to reach out to her, feel free to connect her on LinkedIn. She's a great person to connect with, and obviously leads with strong empathy. I am pleased and honored to call her a friend as well. Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Life is too short. Let's take care of each other at work so that together we can make this world a better place.